Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Shaheen Ghadir with the Fertile Life Podcast. I'm very excited today to have a true reality show star here. Her name is Alexis Haines. If everyone has not heard, she has the podcast called Recovering from Reality. And I'm really excited because she is going to be very different than my normal guest that I have on the show. I'm very excited to have you here. Thank you, Alexis. What I normally like to do is have everyone introduce themselves, letting everyone know a little bit more about what's the most important things in their life and their accomplishments they want people to know about.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. And welcome to the network. That's so exciting to be on Dear Media. I also have a podcast here, Recovering from Reality, and I can't wait to have you guest. But yeah, I am sober of 10 years. I got sober after a very public meltdown on national television. And I was 19 years old, and thankfully I was done treating my body and my mind poorly, and I was ready to take care of myself. And so I got sober when I was 19. I went to school for chemical dependency counseling. My husband opened up the treatment center that we now own, Oro House, and I work as a birth doula for the last 8 years, which will be really interesting for us to dive into that.
We're definitely talking about that.
I'm a mother of 2. I have Dakota, who's 5 and who is special needs, and then Harper, who is 8, who is such an awesome kid. I've dealt with infertility issues myself, and I am excited to kind of like dive in and talk about like birth and mental health and life and all of that.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you about all of that. Being a mother, a doula, a wife, a writer, a mental health advocate. I mean, this is a lot. And also the challenges that you've dealt with in your youth that allowed you to probably be a much stronger person right now, I think is some stuff that I want to touch base about. You know, the Fertile Life Podcast is not only about fertility. I appreciate the fact that you've had some fertility challenges. We're going to talk about your future fertility because I always am curious to know where people's minds stand. But I want to start by commending you. Anyone who has gone through the challenges of needing to become sober, in my opinion, need huge recognition, and I think that probably has molded you into the human being that you are now, and able to handle the things that you can handle now, and also the fact that you've become successful doing the things that you do now. So I commend you on all of that, but definitely want to start talking first and foremost about the mental health advocacy work that you do, because in my world of infertility and fertility, which I like to kind of stress, not infertility, it is such a huge part of what goes on in my patients' minds and in their emotional state. I really try and do my best to emotionally be there. I have a team that I've set up around me of my clinical coordinators and nurses that I think are some of the nicest human beings and the most caring human beings, and that goes a very, very long way. Tell me really what your passion was getting involved in mental health and the advocacy, and I love the work that you're doing in the rehab world right now. Is that mostly in mental health, or is it in also other aspects of rehab?
Yeah. So we're primarily addiction, secondary mental health at Oro House. And obviously we got into that work because both my partner and I are sober, and it's something that we're really passionate about. But yeah, I think that it's interesting to look at how mental health problems are really kind of on the world stage right now with COVID. People are talking about mental health struggles more than ever before, and it makes sense. In 2019, which that's the most recent statistics that we have on kind of like the broad picture of mental health in the Western world. Right here in the United States, like 12 million people considered committing suicide, around 3 million people attempted, and around 50,000 people ended up passing away. And so when you look at that, and then you also look at the addiction rates, right, around 90,000 people, it's projected that in the year 2020, around 90,000 people will have lost their life due to overdose. It's like we can't not be talking about this. Of course, we're dealing with a pandemic right now with regards to COVID, but we're also dealing with like a pandemic of mental health crises that are happening across the board, and it doesn't discriminate. Doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your ethnic background or your financial status. I mean, I think in the last 10 years, what we've really seen at the treatment center is that, I mean, I've treated people who have grown up in poverty, and I've treated the kid that grew up in Beverly Hills. It doesn't matter. It does not. It's something that I think everyone is going to deal with at some point in their life.
Absolutely. I mean, no one has a perfect life, and if you don't know how to if you don't know how to deal with the challenges of mental health and also the ups and downs that come with life, it becomes to be a gigantic challenge and fight in your life. So I commend you on that work. That's really unbelievable. I think that it is so prominent around us, the issues of mental health driving around the city. I don't think it's maybe the pandemic brought it out that we're seeing it. You know, the number of homeless people, and, you know, all the statistics are out there that many of the homeless that are out there have mental health issues that have caused them to get to that point in life. It is so sad how our city has changed, and that there is nowhere for all of these people that need help to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we're really seeing. And what's so interesting is that, I mean, the numbers vary, but according to the CDC, there's only about 450,000 homeless people in America. That's not that many. You would think you'd be able to treat that many people. If you're talking about a country that has hundreds of millions of people in it, it's like, so we're looking at this number of homeless, and you see more of them than ever before. And I think part of that is because California offers probably more services than other states. Another factor would be the weather, right? Because you're not seeing a lot of snow or rain here in Southern California. But yeah, absolutely. Like the displacement of homeless people is absolutely heartbreaking, and there really is no options for them, especially, and this is something that I'm really, as someone who identifies, and I know this is going to be confusing to people because I just talked about how I was married, but as gay or being a part of the LGBTQ community, there are even less options for specifically our trans brothers and sisters when it comes to housing and shelter. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, what we're seeing, how would I put this? What we're seeing in regards to like the homelessness here in California, which if you are driving around does seem far more rampant than it has in previous years, is kind of like a really, it's like we're able to like zoom in and see it like right in our backyards now, where this is something that's like slowly been happening for decades and decades and decades. I mean, as you know, and then we're talking about policy issues, and just across the board, it's just really interesting how you can connect the dots between policies that are in place, plus just the way that the Western world has been truly kind of oppressive towards many groups of people, and you can just kind of connect the dots between all of this, and then of course crisis. I mean, when you're looking at mental health as a whole and as a species, we thrived in hunter-gatherer societies, and then the more that we have built walls, the more that we have othered ourselves, the more that we have focused on the hyper individualism over caring for the collective, the more mental health issues you see arise.
Well, I think we have tremendous challenges ahead of us in this nation. It's sad because there are countries that are third world countries and don't allow or let any of their family members become homeless. And here in the United States, with so many resources and so much wealth available to the country, we have such major problems going on. I think the CDC numbers that you quoted must be so off, by the way.
You do?
I don't think there's a lot of homeless people sitting there filling out applications and letting the CDC know that they're homeless. So I
Sure.
personally think, but then again, or like you said, we could have a skewed vision of this because we do live in California, where it has brought, because of our weather and easier climate, maybe a lot of people here.
Regardless, if you look at the numbers of people who are living on the brink of poverty in this country, it is astonishing, and it shouldn't be like this. You know, it's like, I have someone that's really close to me who her whole family was addicted to drugs. She made it out, right? She has a high school degree. She's putting herself through school. She's working at Costco full time. And she's making barely $1,400 a month working full time in Southern California. She has health insurance now, which is great. But I mean, between rent and a car payment and whatever else, it's like the chronic stress. I mean, we've been kind of sold the lie that somehow depression and anxiety, specifically, I won't get into other issues like bipolar or borderline personality disorder, but that depression or anxiety somehow is just like this chemical imbalance. It's so interesting because we live, again, touching on the fact that like we live in a society where we put blame on and also encourage this individual, right? That like all of the onus is on you. So we've been sold this lie that like our brains, all of a sudden, for millions of people, our brains are not producing enough serotonin. And that's a lie. It's not true. The truth is that living under chronic stress or having unprocessed childhood trauma or certain genetic factors that, and we don't have to get into epigenetics and how, a small trauma or a big trauma can turn on that light switch. But it's so much more about, I think, just the way that we're living, which is just really unsustainable versus some chemical imbalance in our body.
That's so true. Alexis, I wanted to definitely talk about your modern family situation. I recently had Jesse Tyler Ferguson, one of the stars of Modern Family, on the podcast, and I love talking to him, but I'm talking to like a real member of a modern family, and I love how you have opened doors, changed protocols, and done things that are not on the typical stereotype, and I'd love to address that because in my practice, a large part of my practice are LGBTQ members who we help make beautiful families.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite couples that I've ever helped have been people that are not the typical heterosexual couples, and they have just turned out to be the most unbelievable parents, and I've kept in touch with them. So tell me how this got started. I'm sure that my listeners are wanting to know more about this.
Yeah, I mean, when we came out as being in an open marriage, it kind of like broke the internet for a second. Like everyone was, it was like, I'm like, how is this news? People magazine's calling me for answers and wanting to know what's going on. And I'm like, how is this that big of a deal? I think it's so interesting because we're seeing this big push towards kind of dropping the stigma around being in an open marriage or a polyamorous marriage or an ethical non-monogamous marriage. All of those things have little subtleties that make them different, but it's pretty much the same thing. When I got married to my partner, Evan, and I was 20 at that time, and I had told him that I identified as bisexual. And I was newly sober, so I hadn't really unpacked the trauma. I had experienced a lot of early childhood sexual abuse and trauma that happened later on in my teen years. And, we got married, and we're very happily married still to this day. But about 2 years ago, after many years in therapy, I kind of came to terms with the fact that I was far more gay than I was straight, and that while I love my partner very much, that staying in this marriage and not exploring having relationships with women was just not sustainable for me anymore. And I'm so grateful that I have such an incredible partner who really has done a lot of work on himself too. You know, we've both been in this phase of healing and growing for him 16 years and for me the last decade. And yeah, so we explored that together for 2 years, and in May we decided to open our marriage up. And I am in a relationship. I am married to a man and in a relationship with an incredible woman who is a part of our family. And yeah, it's you never know what that's going to be like, right? Like, I'm like, when they meet, like, what's that? Like, what is it going to be awkward? Like, luckily for me, my girlfriend has been in this kind of dynamic before, actually twice before.
Oh, wow.
So you could say it's kind of her thing, married women, but we ended up having a great experience, and they're close while they don't have any intimate relationship. They get along great, and yeah, we're very much so in this like kind of modern family dynamic, and we're exploring. You know, I do see her being like a long-term partner. And we are exploring like what having a third child would look like, which is definitely strange when it's like she doesn't want to carry and I don't want to carry, but we all want a baby boy, and we're like, you know, how is this gonna work? You know?
So let me just remind you, this is the Fertile Life podcast where we have lots of options available.
Yes.
And you definitely came on the right podcast at Dear Media to talk about this. That's very interesting because I have had lesbian couple who neither wanted to carry. Usually, in my same-sex female couples, you know, there's someone that wants to carry more than the other, or they both do, and they both experience it, and sometimes just one person experiences it. But I've had one that's coming right into my mind very quickly, and neither wanted to carry. So we had 2 surrogates that did it and did it beautifully. So that's a lovely option. You can also, there's quite a few things you could do. Like we've had when both women were able to use their eggs and fertilize with the sperm. Now, I don't know if Evan is going to be...
Evan's fixed. So we will be... I made Evan... So, okay. I had fertility issues, got pregnant with my second, had a very challenging pregnancy. You'll actually find this really interesting.
I'm already finding this whole thing very interesting.
Your mind is going to be blown. So I have my first daughter pretty much with ease. I planned a home birth. I pushed her butt out. We ended up needing a C-section. But other than that, had a very, very easy pregnancy, right? And so, yeah, we transferred to the hospital, had a C-section. Around the time she was 18 months old, we started trying for another baby. I had a couple of miscarriages, and then we kept trying for a year, and like nothing was happening. Nothing. And I would get pregnant. They would immediately put me on progesterone because my progesterone was low, which gave me all sorts of crazy side effects, but I was willing to do it, right? And sure enough, a year later, after doing... I didn't go on fertility meds. I did acupuncture and changed my diet and was taking all these supplements and whatever else. It worked for me. We get pregnant with my second daughter, Dakota, who is now 5. And the doctor offers me the blood test, which I didn't have that with my other daughter. The blood test at 10 weeks to find out the gender. And I'm like, great, because I want to know. I'm so impatient. And I was ready to know. And I got a call at 13 weeks. When I was in bed with the flu, I was having a really tough pregnancy that far. Like I said, I was on progesterone, and I was very sick. And on top of it, I had the flu. And my doctor, do you know Dr. Finke?
I know him incredibly well.
Love Dr. Finke. So he called me and he was like, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but the test came back positive for trisomy 13. And most people are like, what's trisomy 13? Because it's not like Down syndrome. Trisomy 13 babies usually are not compatible with life. They usually are stillborn or live maybe a couple of days. And that news just like broke us because we had been trying for so long. And here I was thinking that I'm having this great pregnancy And he said, I need you to come in. We need to schedule you for a CVS test. And if anybody knows what a CVS test is, it's a pretty invasive procedure where they go in through your cervix and they take a sample of your placenta. And it's basically how they confirm that what showed up on the blood test was in fact a positive. And so we do that, and around 16 weeks, I got the results that, in fact, my placenta was positive for trisomy 13. And I had an amazing geneticist, Dr. Williams. I'm sure you're probably familiar with him. He's the best geneticist on, I would say, like, in the country, in my opinion. And he said, well, here's your options. You can terminate. And Dr. Finke was pretty much on board with that because I was at 16 weeks. And he was like, we don't do this. You're starting to like get to the realm where you're going to need a specialist and all the things. And I spoke to my partner, Evan, and I said, I really don't want to terminate. She is looking developmentally pretty much normal so far on the scans. We had an anatomy scan. And I said, I said to Dr. Finke, can I please just do the amnio at 20 weeks? Like, I just want to do an amnio. And then we'll go from there. If my life is at risk or if something happens, we will proceed. But, like, I really, really want to do this amnio. And, you know, he was basically like, all right, sure, go ahead, you know, do the amnio. I don't think anything's going to change at this point. And we did the amnio, and at 22 weeks, I get a call from Dr. Williams' office that the amnio was negative for trisomy 13.
Wow.
So it turns out that my baby had different DNA than my placenta did.
So the placenta had taken the trisomy on, but your baby has not.
Has no trisomy.
Incredible.
And while, yes, she's autistic and special needs, she's pretty high functioning and is thriving. We've had to do lots of OT and PT and all of the things for her, but she speaks and she's a joy. And
oh wow.
But it was crazy because we didn't know for sure until I delivered. So then I was in the hospital. I ended up getting the mumps while I was pregnant. I was hospitalized for it was just an awful pregnancy. This is why I don't want to carry again, by the way. And then my doctor is like pushing for another C-section, and I'm like, I absolutely do not want a C-section. I want to have a VBAC. I'm a birth doula. I know all the risks and benefits. I want
a VBAC is a vaginal birth after a C-section.
And actually, I didn't even advocate for a VBAC. I advocated for a TOLAC, which is a trial of labor after cesarean. I was like, listen, if I need a C-section, take me for a C-section. But like, if I want to have more babies, I don't want to keep having C-sections. And I had a beautiful vaginal delivery in the hospital. And it was glorious. I pulled her out this moment, right? Because you don't really know if she's going to be okay until she's in your arms, right? And I pull her out and I look at her. I'm like, fingers, toes, like, she's fine. She's crying. She's alive. This baby who we didn't think was going to make it this far is here and she's okay. But we didn't know that I had already had blood clots that were in my lung at that point. And so had I had a C-section, I probably would have died. And my OB says all the time, I'm so glad that you followed your gut and that you freaking advocated for that, because we don't know what would have happened if I got you on that operating table with those blood clots.
Wow.
It could have been disastrous. So it's not that I just don't want to carry a baby again.
Well, I think that you have some reason.
Yeah, I've paid my dues.
I think you have some really relevant concerns about carrying a pregnancy again. You were in excellent hands. I know Dr. Finke very well, and he is a superb doctor.
That whole practice is wonderful.
His entire practice, I have so many of my colleagues work there, and it's an excellent practice. Jay Goldberg, who was his partner, and I did residency together.
Oh,
so
awesome.
It's a great practice, and your story right now for someone who's double board certified and an OBGYN initially.
You don't hear it.
I loved hearing it.
Yeah, but it's so rare. You don't hear stories like that. It is literally a miracle. Yeah.
So I just want to let you know, just because Evan had
a vasectomy,
yes, does not mean that he cannot have any more kids.
But Evan is 47.
Okay.
So the risk of
the risks
autism
of having
is higher,
the risks of having autism
right?
are very loosely tied
Okay.
to men over the age of 40. The risks of chromosomal abnormalities are also increased after the age of 40, so I can understand the hesitations in that. But at the same time, I don't know if you want the child to have any genetic connection to your other kids. So that is...
I don't care.
If you don't care, that's a different story. Okay, just it was
I
mouthed.
know lots of people do care.
Absolutely.
And
So-
I understand that.
But I just want to let people know that if you have a vasectomy, it does not mean you can't have another child. Some of my urology colleagues, that's what they specialize as. They go in and within a couple seconds get sperm out and they're done. So that's an option.
Now, does that go down after a certain amount of years?
No.
Your chance?
No. So until the time that a man is alive, they're able to produce sperm. And obviously getting sperm out from the testicle with a needle or a tiny little incision, it's called a TESE procedure, TESE, which is the testicular extraction of sperm. You don't get as much sperm and you have to do it along with IVF. But at that time, if you or your partner, your female partner, were excited about using your eggs or both of your eggs, we would stimulate and get eggs out of whoever is interested, put it with the sperm, whether it's Evan or someone else's, make embryos of yours and also your partner's, and then those embryos you would choose to put back into a surrogate. You could put one of you and one of your partner both in the same surrogate. It increases risks of twins.
My girlfriend, she's in a gay relationship, they did one egg from her girlfriend and one egg from her, and they had twins, but they're not twins.
Well, they are twins, but not from the same egg.
Not from the same egg.
Not from the same mom.
Yes.
But that's beautiful.
It's so cool. They lucked out.
So,
she just kind of was like, well, let's just try two boys right then and there.
That's incredible. So we do something called Reciprocal IVF, where we take the egg from one mom, put it with sperm, make an embryo, and then implant it into the second mom. So they did Reciprocal IVF and regular IVF at the same time, which for me as a fertility specialist, now we're talking, okay?
Yeah.
So now we're really talking. And now you can see my eyes are like all lighting up, and it gets me excited because the fact that I can do that for families, some of like the most unbelievable parents that I've ever helped in this journey, I've stayed in touch with, and as I see their Instagrams and their kids who were born around the same time my kids were, I have in one of my kids, I have twins from IVF as well, because after my oldest was born, we had a little bump in the road and did IVF, and we decided to put a male and a female embryo back, and my twins are almost 10 years old. In their class is a friend of my daughter's whose moms were my patients, and they, whenever they see me, she knows that I helped create her.
So
and
cool.
The fact that she's really good friends with my daughter is beyond special. And when we go to soccer, I sit between the two moms and we just talk and laugh the whole time, and we joke around about baby daddy and things like that. But they're such beautiful family.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful family.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I have another friend, and this is just going back to like the mental health piece of this, because I have another good friend of mine, Amy, who did so many rounds of IUI and a couple of rounds of IVF before she was basically at the point of like desperation. She put in 2 eggs. One of the 2 eggs split into twins, so now she's pregnant with triplets.
Currently?
No.
Oh.
The 2 twins that were in one sac, the baby that split.
Identical twins.
Identical. And then she has a separate boy who was in his own sac. Unfortunately, one twin got sick, and then the other twin got sick, so she ended up having, at the end of it, one healthy baby that she delivered at 28 weeks because they had to do a C-section to remove the other twins. But I mean, it is just wild, the experiences that I've heard. And as a birth doula, like, there are no guarantees. And I actually, so imagine like you're going through that whole process and you're so excited and you think you're having 3 babies, and then at the end of it you only have 1, and like the amount of support you need to get through that and to heal that is so much. You really do need a team. And I will say, as like a birth doula, when I'm working with IVF families, especially after my friend's experience, I am just so much more so, and I know that I always should be, but I put maybe like extra care into them, because I know that for many of them, their struggle has been years long in the making, and that the outcome, I feel that extra pressure to have like the best outcome possible, the best delivery possible, because I know what a harrowing journey it can be to finally have just a healthy baby.
Well, I love that. First of all, I love my doulas.
Oh,
I have a handful of doulas that I've worked with over the years.
Yeah.
Some of them help even before the patient's pregnant. And I think
I've
just
done that a couple
having
times.
a supportive human being that cares and is there for you in this journey of infertility, and then eventually fertility, and there for you all the way through birth, is absolutely beautiful. So that's one thing that I really commend you on doing that. And also, sometimes things happen to us in our own lives. Like, we've had a miscarriage. We've had to do failed IUIs. We've had to do IVF. And then we got a beautiful 4-year-old surprise.
Yeah.
So out of nowhere, we had our 4th kid that came out of nowhere when we thought we can't have kids naturally anymore. So, which is a very pleasant surprise. The world of fertility is, no boundaries, and anything can happen. In this day and age, the science that's available to us can help so many people. I'm completely envisioning a panel that I'm going to have with you, and we're going to have the most interesting people ever talking about mental health advocacy, LGBT patients and advocates, and also modern family members there. I'm just envisioning this happening right now as I'm sitting here, and it's making me so excited. Well, I love that. Is what's coming up for you? What's anything exciting and new going on in your career? Are you going to continue to be a doula? Or is it going to go more towards the area of mental health advocacy? I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot is going on right now. I took a little bit of a break from birth work for a hot minute while I was getting my kids back in school. It was such a weird year, and when they were home, I was actually attending a lot of births, and then throughout the summer, it was a lot, and then I needed like a little bit of a break. I think, I love birth work. Birth work really for me, because I am a sexual assault survivor, I recognized that for me, giving birth was a really challenging experience, and I didn't know how to communicate that, and I didn't know how to get my needs met. And as a result, with my first pregnancy, I had a really traumatic birth experience, and it had nothing to do with the way that I delivered, and it had everything to do with the fact that becoming a mother and going through the process of delivery really brought up for me a lot of trauma and pain. And so I became a birth worker in the beginning really just to support women who had a history of sexual abuse. That was like the near and dear to my heart. That was what I was doing. I was mainly working with teen moms, and I still do. I just also realized that as I am such a giver of my energy to people, like I just want to help everyone. And I realized that like there has to be a balance. So now for every 4 births that I take on, I do one for free or low cost.
I love that though. Thank you.
It's honestly like, I feel like this calling to do it, and I know that it's important, but yeah, there has to be some sort of a balance. So I end up taking about like 3 low cost or free births a year, and then I probably do 7 to 10 paid births a year. And it's been like such an interesting journey, and I absolutely love birth work. I think that we're talking about changing the world, and I think changing the world really starts with healthy parents. I think healthier parents, mentally healthy parents especially, lead to better health outcomes for children. And so in my mental health advocacy, it's like my work as a doula really goes hand in hand with my mental health advocacy work.
I think it's so unbelievable that you could bring your mental health advocacy to your doula work, because pregnancy is a challenging time, so that's wonderful.
With my background in counseling, it just really goes hand in hand.
And of course, being sober during pregnancy
and being
too.
Sober, all of it, right? And just like, a lot of the work I do is like in family systems, which, giving birth and becoming a family often brings up like weird dynamics with your extended family, and there's just so much that I feel like it's a good fit for me, and it really is my calling and what I'm supposed to do. So, I plan on continuing with that. I have a huge project with Netflix coming out this spring, which will be really interesting. Just continuing my work in the treatment center and on the podcast, and just taking care of my kids and potentially growing my family. We'll see what happens.
When we were just about to start this podcast, I knew that it was going to be an exciting talk because I love interviewing people that I don't know that well, because it just makes it so much more fun. And then I interview people that I know really well, and I know exactly where it's going to go. And I had no idea where this was going to go. I have had the best time talking to you. You are very special in many ways, and I look up to you because you've had some big challenges in life that it looks like you've just fixed, and when you have difficulties, you kind of know and have the tools of how to make life better. And that's part of the fertile life, that's part of life, that's part of a good life. So I commend you on that, and I can just, like I said, I'm just envisioning you on my panel, and I'm excited for your show on Netflix, and I can't wait to watch. And thank you again very much for being on the Fertile Life podcast. Please let my listeners know how, if they want to learn more, if they want to follow you, please let us know how we can do that.
Yeah. So you can listen to my podcast here on Dear Media. It's called Recovering from Reality. You can follow us on Instagram at Recovering from Reality, and you can follow me personally at It's Alexis Haines on all platforms.
Wonderful. Thank you again for being here today.